Not easy, but it really means a lot. Everyone here who's in the room and everyone who couldn't make it as well. Now, I was just rereading our book over the past week or so, right? In anticipation and preparation for what I want to say to you guys today. And I got to chapter 8 in our book. That chapter starts with a story. A young intern, 19 years old, in our company. She was working for a 3-month long internship. In month 2 of a 3-month long internship, she comes and she approaches my co-founder and best friend Akshay. And she says, my grandmother's really unwell. Can I take the entire month just working from home and spend time with her? It's been about 2 years, right? But I still think about that quite a bit. The reason it's relevant is both of us thought, okay, what's the worst that could happen, right? Let her take the work from home. But that 1 month was possibly one of the most productive and best pieces of work we have received from any intern that we have worked with ever. 6 months ago, when I was writing this down, this was supposed to be a story about flexibility. How the Gen Z value flexibility, and if you give them that, they will give you the best work of their lives. However, I read it again about 6 days ago, and it hit me much harder. Because 6 days ago, I actually lost my grandmother. She was 79 years old, almost triple my age. Yet, at 79, my grandmother was one of the easiest people I could talk to. There was a reason behind that. She was not judgmental. She would tell us how things were different in their times, but she would not expect the same standard of behavior in today's times. She was very realistic. She was curious to learn from us. She would often ask, what do you guys keep on doing on your phone all day? And post the age of 70, she actually learned how to operate YouTube, right? And I watched her change her mind in front of me about the smallest of things. Now, she never managed a team. She never read this book. However, I would argue she understood how to manage and talk to a generation much younger than her, much better than most people I've met, including myself. And the reason was, she was open to change, open to adapting. Actually, a couple of levels of seniority above him. But the reason this story is important is, it's not about whether he was right or whether he was wrong. But the point is, he had the courage to do that. When I was writing this down for the book, I talked to my parents. At 21 years old, first job, second day, would you have the courage to maybe interrupt someone 3 levels senior than you? And they said, we would not even think about it, right? And both of them unanimously said no. And Weber is not an outlier. It's not the story of one courageous individual. The point is, this generation is fundamentally different with an entirely new attitude. And most of us are managing this generation as if we're managing the older ones. 370 million Indians are under the age of 30 as of now. All of our institutions of our country, some represented in this room for that matter, will be led by this exact very cohort, by all of us. And we keep asking how to manage that. Actually, fundamentally, I believe that is the wrong question. We should not ask how to manage that. We should ask, have we given them a meaning, a mission, an adventure that is worth working for them? Because I promise you, over 150 of my team members are under the age of 25. And the moment we give them meaning, we give them mission, all of the notions we have related to Gen Z, which might be lazy, ungrateful, etc., which we commonly see being portrayed in the media by older generations, all of them will wash away in an instant. They are some of the most driven, dedicated, hardworking, and courageous people I've met.
आदित्य और देवांश का मार्गदर्शन को रियली दिल से मैं बहुत बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ क्योंकि आप जैन जी लिखते नहीं ज़्यादातर मेरे लिए आई मस्ट से यू हैव डन अ गुड जॉब बिकॉज फॉर अस Gen Z and Alpha is something very challenging for us. We want to understand it. And I think Devang ne abhi jo kuch what point जिन्होंने जो what he has told us, हम तो जी लिया, हम जीना 30 years. Now it's your turn. So while handing over the baton, we need to understand. I too have two daughters. One is Chen Stephen. And both of them are, जब भी हम घर में बैठते खाना खाते हैं ज़्यादातर हम आर्गुमेंट में चले जाते हैं. It's not an argument. I want to understand them. वो एक अलग दुनिया था जब हम 30 years back when we were in their age and now in the age of AI, ChatGPT and Grok, एक अलग दुनिया हो गया. And I think all of us must जिनका अभी बेटा बेटी है, we must give them the space. Future belongs to them, and I totally agree with you. In fact, I was looking forward to read the book first because whenever I go for this kind of inauguration or book release, it's always good to have उसको पहले पढ़ लो, उसके बाद जो भी nuances है उसके बाद से few comment. Synopsis उन्होंने मुझे दे दिया था. जब मैंने one day देवांश and आदित्य जब मुझे मिलने आया, I was a little bit shocked. यार Gen Z वाले लिखते भी क्या आजकल? I always find them either in social media उसी दुनिया में रहते हैं यार 24 घंटा more or less अपना उसके दुनिया में रह रहे हैं. And I'm very happy कि this shows कि yes you can do that. And I'm sure Devans and Aditya you've set a benchmark. Keep writing. Not only सिर्फ किताबें लिखना है, इस किताब को make it more popular. Use AI. Use Flipkart. Use Amazon. In fact, I would, the gist of जो भी आप लिखेंगे ना, I am going to read it thoroughly, and it can help us to understand it better. तो आगे में भी किस तरह से not only for policy का बात for all of us, क्योंकि ये कहते हैं ना generation gap हमारा जमाना मोने होता है, अब वो दूरी अब बात चला गया है, and I'm very glad not only that I read the background जिस तरह से दिवांश ने इस IIM अहमदाबाद से आके जिन्होंने हमारे हिंदुस्तान में नेशनल हॉबी में कूद जाते हैं यूपीएससी यूपीएससी ये वो कराके. आई एम ग्लैड दैट उन्होंने इस नेशनल हॉबी पे आई नो सेइंग इट्स बैड आई एवरीवेयर जहाँ पे हम जाते हैं देखो यू आर आवर फ्यूचर. अगर हम देश क्या है इट्स ऑल ऑफ अस. अमेरिकन दे आर फार फार ahead of why so much of research, so much of diversity, so much of जो मन में आए वो करते, चाहे स्पोर्ट्स हो, चाहे रिसर्च हो, चाहे बिजनेस हो, चाहे एआई हो, चाहे सिलिकॉन वैली में बैठ के दिन रात करना हो. I have a lot of friends from USA, so I was trying to understand China और अमेरिका. They are our हमारा आप माने ना माने हमारा रोल मॉडल है. They are our उस मंजिल तक हमें पहुंचना है. And these are this made to Gen Z people like can make our country हमारा देश को आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं. और आगे मुझे पूरा विश्वास है whatever book you have written, because there are too many books are coming up. But Gen Z के बारे में I think this is the first time I think I have read. I'm going to read it and I have heard some of the synopsis. और Aditya, I know him for last few years. A man of क्या कहते हैं curiosity. मैं हमेशा उसको बोलता बेटा आपको बहुत हैंडसम है. किसी का अपने दिल को आगे मत देना. बहुत आगे बढ़ना है. And now he is going to Dublin for higher study in the UK. I told कि देखो पहले अपना एक राशन कार्ड ले लेना. राशन कार्ड मीन्स पहले अपने पैर पे खड़े रहना. You learn something, make your own space. लोग तुम्हें respect दो. तुम्हारा पापा का बाल पक गया तुम्हें पढ़ाते पढ़ाते. Now it's your turn, you make your own place. समाज में अपना जगह बनाओ. जगह बना के क्या हमारे जगह अब जितना भी हम लोग अभी will be out, you all have to take place. चाहे it is in the corporate world or in the bureaucracy or in the judiciary or whatever it may be. आपको लेना है what is the expectation आगे करना क्या है क्या नहीं करना है. And this occasion I am very glad that all of the very very distinguished panel including policemen, these that all of them are sitting here. हमें our carry away point जब हम घर वापस जाएंगे तो this point I believe, I wish some of the local media are also there. कभी इनको आज तक में भी हमारा सोशल मीडिया में बात करना है कि what is the role of Gen Z. I have a Gen Z. तो आजकल क्या you know it well what it has happened. But it's a give a very good एक अच्छा लगता है कि ऐसे कि look Kathy, I am not your father. I am one of the oldies who are trying to understand you all of you. तो उसका अलग दुनिया है, उसका अलग क्या मेन्यू है, अलग सपना है. So I'm sure this good beginning has been done, and I told Devans and Aditya, जिंदगी में सिर्फ रोटी कमाना या पैसा कमाना सिर्फ नहीं होता. भगवान ने एक अच्छा जिंदगी दिया आपको. Make best use of that. आगे तुम्हें जो पसंद दिल से करो, तन मन से करो. Either it's music, either it's sports, either it's book, either it's business. I'm happy that in spite of Devans, which is such an upcoming entrepreneur, I was very glad. मुझे सबसे अच्छा लगा. बहुत मिलते हैं हम लोग को मिलने के लिए अभी 33 years में इतना IIM करने के बाद में पहले बार मुझे अच्छा लगा. मुझे पाउंड जो है it really touched my heart. I told my wife आज पहले बार मुझे IIM मेरे पाउंड जो है हिंदुस्तान में हमारे इसको Having said that, देखो कुछ भी बनो तुम, चाहे NRI बनो, अमेरिका में सेटल हो, कहीं भी रहो, अपना देश को भूलना नहीं. जिस देश ने तुम्हें, जिस पानी से आप पी के, जिस रोटी खा के आप भरे हुए, we owe to our mother India, हम भारत माँ के, we have to do something for that. Just as an elder, as a well-wisher to all of you that इस किताब के बाद में please think of those ideas and the debate जो अभी समाज में चल रहे हैं, उसको कैसे कंस्ट्रक्टिव वे में अपना समाज के लिए तुम्हारा Gen Z को tap their I would say क्या बोलते हैं ना explosive energy उनका idea and all of what you have rightly said. Yes, freedom of speech, and I also believe that in my 33 years 6 district SSP रहा, DCP रहा, I always tell my officer जब तक तुम बोलेंगे नहीं how do I know यार. This be what. Thank you so much सब आए हैं और मुझे पूरा विश्वास है our country is a threshold of something very big, and I think people like Devans and Aditya, Jai Hind. Thank you.
Robin sir, all the dignitaries on the stage, and everyone else. Very good evening to everyone. It is a pleasure to be here today for the launch of the book Management Maximum, Gen Z as a Workforce. So authored by Devansh Jain and Aditya. So let me begin by congratulating both the authors on the wonderful achievement and writing on a book which is so relevant these days. I think the topic of Gen Z is such that everyone across the ages, if you go to your home, you speak to your children, you talk about Gen Z. Then you go to your workspace, you interact, and most of the time, the most common topic of discussion is generally about Gen Zs. Primarily because of the fact that what they have done in Jantar Mantar, but also because the unique thing about this generation is that this is a global generation. And what I mean by global generation is that millennials and other categories of generations, they had their own unique experiences according to the country they were born in, according to the culture they were born in. But this is such a generation which is broadly similar across all the countries. They are all digital natives, and they see and they have experiences which cut across the boundaries of the countries. So, how do we lead and manage such a generation which has grown in a world fully different from the one where we grew up? The subtitle of the book itself, Gen Z as a Workforce, is particularly significant. I say this not only as someone interested in management and leadership, but also from my experience as a police officer. As DCP Crime Faridabad, I see closely how technology is changing society, how young people interact with institutions and how dramatically communications and social behavior have evolved. And there is something particularly fascinating about Gen Z. Gen Z is perhaps, as I told her earlier, is the first global generation of our times. Previous generations were largely shaped by their nation, language, local culture, institutions, and geographies. A young person growing in India experienced a very different social and cultural environment from someone, say, growing up in Japan, Europe, or in America. But Gen Z is different. A young person in Faridabad can watch the same video as someone in New York or in London. They can listen to the same music, follow the same creators, participate in the same online conversations, use the same digital platforms, and aspire to many of the same lifestyles. They are digital natives. The internet was not something that has arrived during their adulthood. It was already part of their world while they were growing up. That has created something unprecedented, a generation whose cultural and behavioral characteristics can be remarkably similar across national boundaries. And I'm again emphasizing it, that this has happened for the first time in the world history itself. The language of these people is transforming jobs, digital platforms are transforming behavior, and young people are transforming workplace expectations. Understanding Gen Z is not merely a management issue, it is an institutional imperative. Let me conclude with one thought. For perhaps the first time in history, a young person in Faridabad can have a worldview influenced as much as by what happens in New York or Seoul or any other place as to what happens in his or her own neighborhood. That is the power and challenge of being a digital native. And perhaps the ultimate lesson for all of us is this: we should not try to manage the generation that will build the future. We should learn how to lead, understand, and empower. Congratulations once again to the authors. I wish Management Maxim Gen Z as a workforce great success, and I hope it sparks many conversations about the future of leadership, work, and society. Thank you.
Kind introduction. You see the advantage of good friends. They give very generous introductions. Let me begin with a confession. I'm actually very nervous about speaking on this panel for several reasons. One, I'm too old to be young, and so I can't claim to be speaking for the Gen Z. But I'm also too young to be old. So I can't also claim to say that, oh, I don't understand that at all, look like an alien species, or somewhere stuck in the between. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is, as Rajesh was saying, this is a digital first generation, digital native generation. I've actually never used any social media in my life. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, never. And so I really don't understand. In fact, one of the jokes that colleagues have in my office is to meet once in a while and pull my leg on the latest thing that is trending and see if I know it. And that's how I learned about the Blue Dolls recently. And the third reason I think I'm a complete misfit is that I've actually never used any AI for any research in my work. And so again, something which is very common to Gen Z is something very alien to me. So probably the only credential that I have is that I know Chandra very closely. He claims that I mentor him, but the selfish reason I talk to him is because I hope to imbibe some of the energy. I think that's the kind of confidence we need if we have to succeed as a society and achieve our collective goal of Viksit Bharat. I do think Chandra and Devansh's book is very timely and very important. I don't just say that as a formality. If by 2047, when we celebrate 100 years of independence, we have to be a Viksit Bharat, a developed country, it will largely depend on whether Gen Z succeed as workforce, as consumers, and as citizens. If they succeed in these three roles, we will achieve our goal of Viksit Bharat to be achieved. But as I say, our wisdom must increase in proportion to our capacity to influence the world. So if Gen Z is powerful enough to shape India's trajectory as we start towards Viksit Bharat, they also must develop capabilities which will ensure the success of this national journey that we've collectively decided to undertake. And which is why this book, some of the issues that the book raises, the contradictions that the book flags is, I think, very interesting. I'm fascinated by the central thesis of the book. We keep our house, we keep our windows open, we let the good things from all cultures come and shape our society, our politics, our culture. But we should not be thrown off our feet by any of that. We should not be too overawed by any of these winds of change, winds of ideas that come and enters our house.
Center.
बेसिकली बुक अभी यही है, बहुत रेलेवेंट टॉपिक है हमारे जनरल मंत्र पे भी जो प्रोटेस्ट वगैरह हो रहे थे वो पूरा जेन जी की वजह से ही हो रहे थे, जैसे ये हो रहे थे। तो अभी सभी बहुत क्यूरियस हैं कि पूरी गवर्नमेंट को जेन जी के साथ बात करनी है, बात करना बढ़ाना है अपना। तो ये किताब इस समय लिखने का पॉइंट ही ये था कि इस टाइम समझे कैसे जेन जी को, उन्हें क्या चाहिए अपनी ज़िंदगी में। उन्हें काम के लिए सिर्फ पैसे की तरफ नहीं पड़ता, उन्हें चाहिए हम अगर आ रहे हैं काम क्यों आ रहे हैं, एक रीज़न, एक मीनिंग चाहिए अपनी ज़िंदगी में। इसलिए ये किताब हमने आपको लिखी है ताकि पर्सपेक्टिव, इंडिया में सबसे ज़्यादा जनरलीज की मात्रा है पूरे ग्लोब में, पूरे प्लानट में। तो इंडिया के लिए सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट ये है जनरलीज को।
इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर पीएम साहब के भी आए हैं, तो क्या आप भी उनसे जुड़े हुए हैं?
तो मैं उनसे इन किताब के द्वारा भी जुड़ा हूँ। पर्टिकुलर उन्होंने हमें मेंटर किया, तो जितने भी आपके लोग पैनलिस्ट में देखे उन्होंने हमें बहुत मेंटर करा जब हम ये किताब लिख रहे थे। उन्होंने हमारी बहुत मदद करी है, उन्होंने अपना पर्सपेक्टिव दिया। इसमें हमने इसमें विकसित भारत के ऊपर लिखा है, गवर्नमेंट के ऊपर लिखा है कि 2047 में हमारे प्रधानमंत्री का जो गोल है विकसित भारत का, वो हम कैसे पहुँचेंगे, वो इस किताब के थ्रू हमें।
2 शब्द अपने बारे में बताएं।
हाँ, मैं देवांश जैन नवल हूँ। मैं एक कंपनी चालू कल्चर सर्कल के नाम से, मैं IIM अहमदाबाद में था तब मैंने कंपनी शुरू करी। 2 साल में भगवान की कृपा से हम ऑलमोस्ट 1000 करोड़ की कंपनी बन चुके हैं। एंड यही गोल है कि हमारी जो टीम है 90% 25 साल की उम्र से कम है। तो यही गोल है कि आगे इन सब बच्चों के साथ मिलके ग्रो करते हैं।
आपकी फर्स्ट बुक
ये मेरी पहली किताब है।
कैसा क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा?
मुश्किल होता है किताब लिखना सबसे पहले तो।
युवा जेंजी के बारे में बात करें, हमें जेंजी के बारे में सोचना है, हमें बताना है कि हाउ हमारे जो देश का रिसोर्स सबसे, कोई देश का रिसोर्स हीरा नहीं है, देश का रिसोर्स चांदी नहीं है, देश का रिसोर्स सबसे बड़ा जेंजी। तो जेंजी तमाम तरीक़ों से आगे बढ़ेगा और बढ़ता ही रहेगा, और हम चाहते हैं कि हमारा देश वो जेंजी को एक मुकाम में पहुँचाए, हम सब साथ में बढ़े और विकसित भारत 2047
कितने स्टेट्स के को आपने ये गाइडेंस दिया है कि किस तरीके से आपके साथ जुड़े वो?
कितने स्टेट्स हम भारतीय पहले हैं, हम प्रदेश में मानते हैं भारतीय पहले। तो हमें आज हमारा बुक लॉन्च है, तो बुक लॉन्च है तो फिर हमारा पहली बार हम उसमें हमारा प्लान है कि ऑक्सफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी में एक किताब लॉन्च करें हम दिसंबर फिर अक्टूबर के महीने। ऑक्सफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी
मैनेजमेंट मिक्सिंग के तहत तो जेन जी को क्या मैसेज है इस बुक के जरिए?
वो मैसेज ये है कि वो आगे बढ़े, वो अच्छे से अपना रिसोर्स लगाए, यही उद्देश्य है कि वो पालन करें और देश की इकनॉमी और देश के बढ़ने में मदद